Hello and welcome to the Season 2 recap of Euphoria. If you haven't seen my Season 1 recap, I'll link it below and in the cards. Anyway, in episode 1 of Season 2, we get Fez's backstory featuring his gran, who is now in a vegetative state. We see her back in her heyday, in a stylish suit, as she walks into a strip club and she shoots a young Fez's dad in the privates, and then she takes Fez to live with her. Fez's face is all bruised, and so it's clear that he's been both neglected and likely abused. His gran isn't exactly a law-abiding citizen, so we see how Fez gets into that hustle life. One day a kid is dropped off with them and just never picked up again, and the kid tries a cigarette, and that's where he gets his name, Ashtray. And then he becomes Fez's little brother / business manager partner. One day Fez's gran takes a fall, and I'm not sure if it's a stroke or a heart attack, but there is a delay in getting her to the hospital, and Fez does eventually drive her there, but the delay caused quite a lot of damage, and his gran is not going to be up and about anytime soon or ever. So Fez has to take over parenting Ash and his gran's business. In the present day, meanwhile, Fez and Ash are in the middle of some business. Rue is in the car with them, and as Fez and Ash get out to take care of things, they tell Rue to stay in the car and look after Faye, a new character introduced this season. Suddenly, the girls are grabbed. They're all made to take their clothes off so that this gangster guy can be sure that they're not wearing wires. All this for a crime boss lady that Fez is going to be working with. This is a lot of shenanigans for the beginning of the episode, but welcome to Euphoria, I guess. The world just comes at you pretty hard in these parts. Cassie, meanwhile, is sitting alone outside of a petrol station. She's had a fight with her sister Lexi, and she stormed off from the party they were at together. Nate comes to the same place buying some beers, and he sees sad Cassie, offers her a ride to the party. He starts speeding. He's drinking and driving, by the way, as though he has some kind of death wish. Cassie is both terrified, but this also seems to kind of work for her, I guess, because she removes her underwear. Cassie, no. Anyway, Cassie and Nate end up at the same party as Maddie and everyone, and they're having sex in the bathroom while Maddie is knocking on the door. Of course, Maddie doesn't know that her best friend Cassie is in there having sex with her ex-boyfriend Nate. Maddie eventually makes it into the bathroom and she's smoking with some guy while Cassie is hiding in the tub, so she's not caught. Lexi and Fez get to talking, and they talk all evening, and it's one of the most wholesome scenes on this whole show, maybe ever. He ends up asking for her number. Jules and Kat are taking shots, and we later see that she is still happy with Ethan, where I feel as though Kat and Ethan don't belong on the show because they're going to be ruined. So yeah, this is the usual kind of stressful Euphoria party. So after that whole scene at the dealer's house, Rue ends up back in Fez's car, and she takes the drugs that belong to Faye. Now, I've only ever seen her take pills, which I know is just basically better packaged street drugs, but Faye uses H. And this little case has her paraphernalia, and Rue is taking it. It's not good. We always hear how once Oxy users turn to that, it's kind of the beginning of the end for them. This won't end well for Rue. Nate is stalking Maddie from afar, so this guy that she's talking to is probably in danger. In fact, everyone is in danger because Nate is just generally skulking around, and as usual, I have no idea what he's up to, but it can't be good. McKay and Cassie end up talking, but thank goodness they don't reconcile. So a lot of people were saying that they thought McKay's storyline was just kind of forgotten, but if anything, his random appearances feel realistic for someone who has just gone off to uni and just can't hang with his high school friends anymore every weekend. Rue and Jules do end up reconciling though. Remember they broke up when Jules ran away and Rue decided to stay because she didn't want to leave her mom and her sister? Yeah. Meanwhile at the party, Fez starts beating up Nate. He beats him to a pulp pretty much. Multiple blows to the head, which is the last thing Nate needs because he's already not completely alright there, like respectfully. So remember Nate called the cops to report that Fez had drugs and Fez had to flush them all down when the cops were knocking on his door? Yeah, it's over that. And for Nate generally ruining everyone's lives in town. Jules and Rue end up talking and Rue tells her that she relapsed the night Jules left. In episode 2, Rue tells us in her narration that Nate Jacobs is in love with Cassie. Oh goodness. While he's out of it in the hospital, he's fantasizing about this perfect life with her, like the young Kennedys, but dark-sided undertones and secrets, so like the Kennedys. Rue and Jules are also happily together, but at that party, Rue used with a guy named Elliot, and she almost OD'd. Anyway, this guy is around now. He goes to Euphoria High with them, and Rue is scared that he might mention something about the other night, about them using together. Jules is upset because she senses something between them immediately, and so Rue reveals that they hung out the other night and did drugs together. Jules says she thinks Rue has a crush on Elliot, and that's what's upsetting her. It's difficult to tell with Rue though. With the exception of Jules, it's hard to tell when she's into someone, but I suspect it's more the drug connection, because from what the show has shown us, her use has been a pretty solitary thing. Now she has someone who doesn't mind her using, uses with her. There doesn't have to be any secrecy or shame around him. So, I mean, I get that connection, and they're drug friends. Maddie is fantasizing about being with Nate. She still has Nate's dad's CD, by the way, the one that has the encounter between Nate's dad, Kel, and Jules at the CD motel back from season 1. Ethan and Kat seem happy on the outside, but Kat's putting on a good show. She is unhappy though. At this point, I was guessing that it was something like he's too good and straight-laced for her. It hasn't been revealed at this point, but she looks annoyed and bored. Faye, by the way, lives with Fez now because it's safest for her there, relatively speaking. Nate's parents call Cassie and ask her for information about who beat Nate up. They're convinced that she was a witness at the party and she knows. Elliot and Rue are still hanging out. Where do they get the money to do these drugs? They actually seem to have a nice friendship and, they can talk. It's really a pity about the drugs though. Kat makes a list of pros and cons regarding her relationship situation. What's the issue? Why doesn't she love Ethan? She's asking herself this. She has this guy who cares about her, treats her well, but yeah, she's annoyed and bored by him, which I can imagine also makes her feel bad because you can't help those feelings. She eventually invites her friends on her bowling date with him just so that she can have some fun and not have to deal with this relationship. Rue sees Cassie run to Nate. She sees them kissing. Oh no. So Cassie and Nate are really doing this now, I guess. Rue meanwhile shows up to an NA meeting very clearly strung out, and it's very gross and disrespectful. I know that addiction is a serious disease, but it's also just so repetitive and exhausting, and I want to check out. I feel so much for her mom and her sister who have no other option but to stay fighting for her life. Nate tells Cassie that they can't see each other anymore. She cries and runs off, and Nate goes to find her and they end up hooking up again. This feels like a kind of a game to him, the wrongness of it. Cassie's guilty, especially. He likes it. He taunts her with it. Nate then tells his dad that he knows about the Jules thing and that a couple of people actually know. He tried to stick up for his dad, and that's how he got beaten up. In episode 3, finally we get Kel's backstory. Back in high school, we see a pretty close friendship with him and his best friend Derek, and it's pretty clear that Kel has at the very least a sexual curiosity about Derek. Nothing really happens, but Kel's dad is kind of suspicious of their closeness, even though he won't really acknowledge it. Eventually Kel meets a girl named Marsha, and Derek has a girlfriend as well. And I'll admit, I kind of breathed a sigh of relief because his dad looks really scary and I just wasn't ready to deal with all that yet. Although I know that this could be potentially damaging to Kel, so this can't and shouldn't go on. He does seem attracted to Marsha, but yeah, this isn't who he is. It's not what he really wants. After graduation, Kel and Derek end up at a gay bar together having shots. It's Derek's suggestion that they go there, just the two of them. So it could be because he knew that they would serve the boys alcohol there. Well, I mean, I couldn't tell. Anyway, they end up having a really nice time and they embrace and kiss, and it's actually really sweet. Then later on, Kel gets a call from Marsha. She tells him that she's pregnant. By the way, it's so weird to see Kel as this really sweet and sensitive kid. In the present day, meanwhile, Rue is busy having fun. She's high, of course, and she walks us through how to hide being an addict. Her sister Gia is onto her though, and they have a pretty explosive fight. She's been lying to everyone, telling them that it's just weed. Jules talks to Elliot about his intentions with Rue, and they all kind of make up and agree to be friends. Rue is still using from that girl's stash, by the way, so she's regularly using H now, which is bad. Cassie wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day to get ready for school. It takes her 3 hours, and all this so that Nate can notice her. He doesn't. Or he pretends not to. One day, she kind of cosplays Maddie and he slightly notices her, or he shows that he does, and she's elated. Jules and Rue are also getting more intimate, so their relationship is developing, but Rue goes to this drug lord lady and offers to be a distributor. The lady goes for it, and Rue gets a suitcase of goods to sell around school and around town. This storyline makes my stomach hurt. Kat meets Ethan's parents, and I had to mute this whole part, so I don't actually know what was said. It was starting to get too awkward, and I can't do awkward, sorry. Nate's dad ends up at Fez's house to confront him, and Nate's lies all come spilling out. See, among other things, Nate told his dad that everyone knows about him and Jules, but this is the first Fez is hearing of it, so Kel pretty much told on himself because of Nate's lies. Fez is just like, keep your weirdo son away from me. Elliot and Jules have a pretty good conversation and they're starting to bond. I don't mind it. Rue's still going to her NA meetings. She's there with her suitcase. She's a typical addict, very selfish. Even Ali eventually gives up on her in the moment. She's deeply unlikable and the drugs are turning her into someone else in a way that we haven't seen on the show before, but I guess since her use is escalating, it makes sense. Nate is meant to pick up Cassie, but at the last minute he cancels and he goes over to Maddie's house instead with a bouquet of roses in hand. Episode 4 starts with a romantic montage of Rue and Jules as various characters in famous movies and cartoons. At one point they're being physically intimate, but Rue is so high she can't actually feel anything, so she fakes it. Jules notices and she talks to Elliot about it. He kind of teaches her some moves and then they kiss. Oh no. Then they're interrupted by Rue arriving, but they don't get caught or anything, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. They should have gotten caught. Cassie, meanwhile, is secretly heartbroken. Maddie and Nate are back together. He's still seeing Cassie though. They have a fight, and yeah, the way he manipulates her causes her to slowly come undone a bit. He arrives at Maddie's birthday party and he's publicly with Maddie, and Cassie looks like she might just disintegrate. She's also kind of in her I won't be ignored phase, so we don't know what she's going to do. She's so desperate for his attention that she can't even control herself anymore. It's such a sad and pathetic display and heartbreaking, but at the same time kind of unintentionally funny. Anyway, Rue, Jules and Elliot are all hanging out, half hooking up with each other, and then they steal some alcohol from a corner shop, and when Rue starts drinking, Jules gets upset because Rue is meant to be sober. So I'm on Twitter a lot after these episodes and people were mad at Jules for this, but I remember last season they went to a party while Rue was sober and Rue didn't appear triggered by the alcohol. She didn't drink. She didn't even have an issue with Jules drinking. It was more that Jules was getting wasted and not being honest with Rue. So this was a dumb thing to do, and Jules is also going to need to make some adjustments if she wants to be with somebody with these issues. But the onus is also on Rue, as an addict, to take responsibility for her surroundings and her triggers. She's obviously not thinking clearly right now, so yeah. They end up fighting and Rue goes home. Jules ends up going home with Elliot, and as they're hooking up, he tells her that Rue has been lying about her sobriety and he's been using with her. As in, she's not just using weed, she's on the hard stuff. Rue is at home and she's properly nodding out on the suitcase drugs. It's bad. She's really close to the party part of using being over, and she's just using to stay well, functional, and also to kind of numb herself out. It's really grim. Kat tells Maddie eventually that she can't stand Ethan, and the girls have a heart-to-heart about it. Kel, whose life is out of control at this point, goes for a drunken joyride. He's spiraling. He ends up at that bar he was at 25 years ago with Derek. Oh man, he's such a sad drunk. He slow dances with a guy and he pretends it's Derek, and he does eventually get thrown out of the bar because he causes some trouble. He was looking for trouble. I don't know, I feel like he might not make it. Everyone at Maddie's house, meanwhile, ends up in the hot tub. Maddie goes off on Nate for being, well, Nate, and Cassie chunders in the hot tub with everyone in there. And I remember texting a friend to say that Cassie was in such a bad way this episode that chundering in the hot tub is probably the best way her night could have ended, all things considered. By some miracle, Cal gets home safely. He's not done trashing his life though. He relieves himself on the floor and he gives a little drunken speech to his family. He confesses his sexual relations with men and trans women. He tells Nate that his secret life wasn't his regret. Nate was his regret. He reveals the very disturbing material that they found on their other son's computer. Yes, let's not forget that there's another Jacob's son, and he hasn't been spared the Jacob's curse. Kel tells Nate that he doesn't even know him, and he blames his family for the way that his life is. He says goodbye to the family and he leaves the house. I don't know if he'll be back. This scene is spectacular in how horrifying it is. It's basically bore on the floor, Succession level of nightmarish and jaw-dropping, and McSteamy was made for this role. We're meant to hate him because, he is still a predator and he carried on that unhealthy way that he was raised, and he passed his issues on to his son in a way. And even when he did realize the damage, he didn't try to correct course. He's still running away instead of trying to fix it and help his sons. Still though, his loneliness and hopelessness just broke me here. I thought in the scene that Jules had gone back to doing her random hookups, but that might have been Elliot's shadow. I wasn't sure until someone caressed her leg where it looked like she might have self-harmed. I'm guessing Elliot and Jules have slept together. They have slept together. By the way, there was one point in the bathroom where Elliot ends up getting rid of the line of drugs that Rue left for him. Most addicts will very rarely waste drugs by throwing them out, so I wonder if he's still in the recreational phase of using and doesn't need them to function the way Rue does. Sure, he's a stoner, but if he's able to control his use of the harder stuff, I guess he's not as far gone as Rue. A lot of people have hated this character, saying that he enabled and fueled Rue's use, but I don't know, I'm not a fan of that framing. Rue was a seasoned addict and had already gotten her hands on H before meeting him. She was going to do it whether he was around or not. Her escalating just coincided with them meeting, but as much as I don't like the kid, I don't think he's at all to blame for her issues, and if anything, because of the kind of drugs that she's using now, I'd almost prefer her not to be alone, because we saw how close she was to possibly ODing at the party. The kid is still shady as heck though, I gotta say. In episode 5, Rue's mom finally finds out that she's been using again, and oh my goodness, she tells Rue that Jules told her everything. Rue's suitcase is gone. Rue's in panic mode, extremely physically aggressive towards her mother and her sister. It's bad. Rue starts lying at first when she thinks she still has some leverage. Then she starts gaslighting them when she knows that she's caught and the jig is up. Then she outright attacks. Then she switches to bargaining. It's actually extremely traumatic to watch. Rue walks out into the lounge and Jules and Elliot are sitting there, and she attacks both of them, and she breaks up with Jules, basically telling her that she hates her and that Jules is nothing to her. This Mr. Hyde version of Rue knows exactly how to exploit everyone's insecurities and vulnerabilities. Her mom eventually packs her up and she's off to rehab again because she's out of options. At this point, I remember feeling like she's going to be like one of those people on the show Intervention that just run away when it's time to go to rehab. It's clearly not Rue's choice to go to rehab yet, and she's nowhere near ready to get clean. And then, oh my goodness, it happened. She makes a run from it, out of the car, into oncoming traffic. It's high drama. She ends up in some alley and then at Fez's, and when he doesn't answer, she goes wandering about the streets. It's nighttime now, so I'm guessing the withdrawals have kicked in. She goes snooping in the bathroom at Lexi's house, and she steals someone's rings. She's searching for medicine in the cabinet. It's very chaotic. Lexi's mom sees that she's in bad shape, and she tries to stall Rue until her mom can get there. They stage a little intervention then at Lexi's house, and Rue, because she's chaotic and sick and using everything she has to get away, announces to the group that Cassie and Nate have been hooking up. She leaves a whole lot of drama behind her as she makes a run for it again. She goes back to Fez's, but he has nothing for her, but she goes snooping around his grand's medicine. She's a proper drug fiend at this point. She physically fights him for them, and he eventually kicks her out of his house. She breaks into another couple's home and she steals a bunch of valuables. They spot her and she runs off. She's really hurting. She gets chased by the cops. This episode is exhausting, and I never knew that someone with withdrawals could have this much energy, honestly. But I guess that the desperation for her fix is fueling her. She goes to her supplier's home, at the lady who gave her the suitcase, and tries to offer her the jewelry and money that she stole. This lady, Lori, I think, she's very creepy. Well, I mean, she gave a high school kid a suitcase of drugs to sell, so yeah. But she tells Rue that at least she's a woman. There'll always be something that people want from her. her body. She then gives Rue morphine, knowing how desperate Rue is. I'd recommend not watching the scene if needles freak you out. I couldn't do it. So I guessed at this point that maybe the lady wants to get Rue properly hooked and indebted to her so that Rue would have to sell for her forever, but no, it's worse than that. The next morning, Rue wakes up in the lady's house, but the doors are all locked, like padlocked from the inside, to intentionally trap anybody inside the house. Also, there's a bunch of men just sleeping and passed out all over the couches around the house, and I have some questions that I'm not sure I want answered about what could have happened after that morphine scene. Anyway, Rue manages to break out through the window and escape. After this episode, I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to continue with this show. This was exhausting and miserable to watch, even though Zendaya is just an unparalleled talent on the show. Wow. In episode 6, we open with Rue, and I'm already exhausted. She's withdrawing still, I guess. Or I guess technically she's in detox. And in an absolute world of pain. Her mother is heartbroken, and she tells us in her narration that she's basically waiting for a rehab bed to open up. So in the meantime, it's cold turkey at home. I feel like the people who say that this show glorifies drugs have not seen the show. Rue is also having to reckon now with everything she said to the people she cared about while she was still in the midst of her meltdown. After a couple of days, she's functional enough to stand and she calls Ali to apologize. He forgives her right away, and you can see that it means so much to her. So a lot of addicts do say that one of the many reasons they continue to use is they can't face the guilt of what they've put their loved ones through, and they think it's too much or it's too late, and a way to cope then with those feelings of guilt is just to carry on using. Anyway, this is another excellent opening scene. Ali comes over and he cooks dinner with Gia and the family. Life in the household kind of revolves around Rue and her addiction, and this is just a full-time job for the mother, basically. It's good that Ali notices that, and he spends some time with Gia as well. Nate, meanwhile, is feeling good about his dad being gone. His mom is partying, a lot of day drinking going on. She's possibly spiraling a little, but I guess who can blame her? Her husband just dropped a couple of bombshells and walked out. Now she's left with her problematic sons. Ethan and Kat are having lunch. She means to break up with him today, but she lies to him and tells him that she's ill and it's terminal. She's being really gross here. He's sick of it and he breaks up with her. Thank goodness. She basically gaslights him into breaking up with her. I don't really know what to say about the storyline that hasn't been said already. The show already kind of sidelined her, and now this. It just feels like a missed opportunity for what could have been an interesting progression in her story from last season as she figures out what she wants. I mean, I guess teenagers can be thoughtless and selfish, but this didn't really feel consistent with Kat's character. Cassie's mother has Lexi hide all the knives because Cassie is properly going through it. She's in a meltdown over Nate and Maddie getting back together. She's inconsolable. I'm sorry, but it was sometimes unintentionally funny because it looked like she was dying or something. She was just so beside herself over this boy. Lexi, meanwhile, has been working on the school play and she's having second thoughts about doing it, and she talks to Fez about it. They end up watching a movie together, and of course, we get the second most wholesome scene on the show, and it's the two of them. They're very adorable, even though I don't want Lexi mixed up in his world. Plus, she's still in high school, and I don't know how old Fez is. Let's put that aside for a minute and enjoy a cute budding romance. Okay. Cassie is obsessively calling Nate. Nate and his mom talks, and she asks him about his love life. They have a weird relationship. She knows that Nate is troubled. Understatement. He doesn't like that she knows that he can't lie to her. Like, she knows that Nate strangled Maddie and it wasn't Tyler. He tries to lie to her and she's just like, please. They kind of talk and she says that he was pretty normal until the age of 9 or something. What happened? Of course Nate won't say. This family needs intense therapy post-haste. He basically, Nate, just wants to pretend that now that Carl is gone, he has no issues. Those are over as well. It's his chance to start over, and it's irritating to him that his mother doesn't buy it. Faye, her boyfriend, comes back and tells her that the cops have their sights set on Fez and Ash. He's cooperating with them as well. And then Nate does his laying in wait in the dark thing again in someone's house. It turns out to be Maddie's house. He tells her, acknowledges that he humiliated her and that it's over between him and Cassie. kind of an apology in a Nate way. I don't know. He brings up the CD and she plays dumb. He tells her that he needs it, but she says she doesn't have it. He then plays Russian roulette as she cries, and eventually she tells him that it's in her purse. I really hope that this cures Maddie of her obsession with toxic psychopaths. Nate calls Jules and tells her that he really needs to talk to her. She takes a box cutter with her before going out to meet him. Good girl. He apologizes and tells her that he was trying to protect somebody who didn't deserve to be protected. His dad, Cal. He gives Jules the tape, and then he tells her that everything he ever said was true. What? This is when they were flirt texting, and Jules thought that it was Tyler. Now, the thing about Nate is that I find Jacob Elordi so attractive that I can go from being generally repulsed by him, but the minute he says or does something that seems kind of genuine and sweet... I know, catfishing isn't sweet, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I fumble a little in my hatred of him, and this was one of those moments. Good thing that Jules gets the hell out of there, but I don't think this is the end of it for both of them. Nate calls Cassie and tells her to pack a suitcase. He's coming to get her. She can stay at his house. Oh, Cassie. I have no idea what to even say at this point. She's beyond saving, so I guess we're just going to have to go along for this ride until it inevitably derails. So Rue mentions at one point that Nate wants to take over his dad's business, following in his dad's footsteps to become the perfect family man in town, I guess. I don't think that Nate will be able to keep the charade up the way Cal did, though. Rue says at the end of the episode that she wants to get clean. She'll go to rehab. I guess among other things, waking up to possibly being trafficked to some gross men was basically rock bottom. At the end of the episode, we hear Rue's mom crying on the phone, begging for a bed for Rue. She rightly says that she needs inpatient treatment because Rue, on her own, she will take her life. In episode 7, we get a flashback to Rue's father's wake. Rue and Lexi were still really close back then, and so obviously the play is about their lives in this Euphoria town, and she's changed the names of all the characters. Lexi is having some last minute jitters, and she has an adorable conversation with Fez about it on the phone. The play itself is phenomenally chaotic but deeply personal for Lexi, who seems to otherwise keep it together and be an observer, as she once told us. Her friendship with Rue, the relationship with her sister, her dad becoming an addict and leaving. She opens up about how these things have impacted her and the people around her. It's a fantastic play, actually. It was also really sweet seeing the girl's mom get really emotional, and in the beginning Cassie as well. Remember, Cassie's kind of estranged from her family because she's busy playing toxic house with Nate. I have a feeling something is about to go down with Faye, her boyfriend, and the cops. He's trying to convince Faye to be cool, and Ashtray smells a rat. By the way, Jules and Rue are sneaking glances at one another. It's awkward. Rue is on the mend, so she might have to acknowledge that deep down Jules did the right thing, but right now they aren't quite ready yet. Rue's mom tells her at one point, and I love this scene, that it's time for her to pay attention to Gia, who's struggling in school. Her mom basically lets her know that it's time for Rue to decide for herself if her life is worth it. Her mother will be there to support her in her sobriety, but spending every moment fighting to keep Rue alive means that her other daughter will be slipping through the cracks, and she risks losing both of them then. Maddie is really going through it. As she says, Nate put her through hell, and now he's with her best friend, and of course she feels betrayed by Cassie, who refuses to even talk to her. Cassie runs out of the play. She's emotional. She pretends she's okay though, like we literally see her practice smiling through her tears in the mirror. Nate has been having weird nightmares about his father, and of course this is all getting mixed up in his fantasies about Maddie, Cassie, and Jules. Yeah, his dad leaving doesn't mean that his demons are suddenly vanquished. I'm curious to see where things go from here for him. By the way, all this time, Fez is all dressed up and he's supposed to be at Lexi's play, but he's getting held up, nervous about what he's wearing, wanting to make a good impression. And then my favorite scene of this play is one depicting all of the jocks working out, and the homoerotic elements of their interactions are really emphasized here. It's hilarious, and Ethan is so good in this. So remember in season 1 there was that scene at McKay's party where the guys were shaming Cassie because one of her nude photos or videos leaked, and all the guys were just sitting there without their shirts. Yeah, kind of making fun of that vibe, but like in a good-natured, fun way. It was really funny. It was was also a ton of fun to really laugh watching the show for a change, and to see the characters in the audience have such a good time as well. Well, everyone except for Nate. This seems to have touched a nerve for him, so he storms out and he tells Cassie that it was really homophobic. In the final scene, Nate tells Cassie to pack her things and get out of his house. It's done. In episode 8, the final episode of season 2, adorable Fez is about to leave for Lexi's play. He's in his tux, he has a bouquet of roses, but Faye's boyfriend tells him that the cops found Mouse's body. Then Faye, who is actually now on Fez's side, says no, Laurie killed him, the drug lady. She warns Fez to be quiet. Then Ashtray, Jesus, this kid is dumb sometimes, but he's a kid. He kills Faye's boyfriend. So if you haven't watched the show and you don't know what this is about, basically Faye's boyfriend is trying to get Fez on record as being involved with the murder of Mouse. Lexi asks Fez at one point what if he thinks about the future, and they share their dreams, and he tells her about the show Little House on the Prairie and how he wants that kind of life, to just be on a farm. Of course, Lexi has her future plan down to a T, down to the amount of kids that she wants. Cassie is absolutely raging, and then she's suddenly calm. She walks to the stage and everyone is like, oh no. She rips Lexi apart for humiliating her in the play. Her mother tries to get Lexi to go home. A fight breaks out as real life drama plays out on stage, and people aren't really sure if this is meant to be part of the play in like some kind of meta way. Maddie then goes after Cassie, wanting to give her a beat down basically. Rue says that she went to Elliot's and she told him that he may have accidentally saved her life, so she forgives him for snitching. He tells her that he's still using, and they both say that neither of them have spoken to Jules. He sings to her then, and wow, he has a stunning voice. I think he's a singer in real life anyway, but yeah, he's good. I do think that the scene was too long though, and ultimately irritating, because why would you spend so much time on a random side character that nobody actually cares about? Anyway, Lexi has an emotional moment, but the crowd starts cheering for her and they're carrying on with the play. The show will go on. Meanwhile, back at the house, oh no. Fez decides that he's going to save Ash and take the fall for Faye's boyfriend's murder, and he tells Ash to get out of there. Ash, meanwhile, just locks himself in the bathroom with a bunch of guns. Nate is angry, as usual. He has a gun and he ends up going to his dad, who's hanging out, or he lives with these scantily clad party people, I guess. He's living there, figuring things out, and he tells Nate that in some ways, he's happier. Nate then talks about his discovery at 11 years old, seeing his dad's videos, and for the longest time, he says that he had nightmares that his dad was doing the same thing to him. Cal tells Nate that he screwed up and there's nothing he regrets more. Nate says he doesn't want an apology, he wants revenge. Then we see lights of police cars in the background and Cal is arrested. I really like this storyline. While my heart goes out to Cal and I'm glad that he's finally openly figuring out who he is, he's also still a sex pest. Recording people in sex acts without their consent is a crime, so he needs to go to jail. Meanwhile, a SWAT team breaks into Fez's house. Fez gets shot, and Ash just keeps shooting at the cops. Basically, there's a shootout happening. Ash, what are you doing? He gets shot, presumably killed, and Fez gets arrested. Rue calls Lexi and tells her that she loved her play and it meant a lot to her, and can she come over and they can hang out? They talk about the losses of their fathers, and that's how the play ends, with them starting to mend their friendship and finding some comfort in each other and embracing. After the play, Jules goes over to Rue and tells her that she loves her and misses her. Not now, Jules. Rue kisses her on the forehead and walks out. Good. These two are the last thing that each of them needs right now, but all things considered, things are kind of peaceful between them, which is good. Rue tells us in her narration that she stayed clean the rest of the school year and that she's trying. And that was the end of the episode. Anyway, that's it for this video. Feel free to share your thoughts and thank you for watching.